my god, I had fun writing this script. Hey, what's up everyone, James here, and today I bring you an epic crossover, 2003's G.I. Joe versus the Transformers. Now, these two franchises first collided in 1986 when Marvel had the license to both properties. However, what separates this crossover from Marvel's is two things. First, this is a collaboration between two publishing houses, Dreamwave, who at the time had the Transformers license before they went out of business, Devil's Due Publishing, who was just an in-house arm at the time of Image Comics, but they had the license to G.I. Joe. Second, this was the first time G.I. Joe and Transformers were given their own universe for their collaboration and origin stories to take place, tying them together. Initially, I wanted to do Dreamwave's Transformer and G.I. Joe series, which came out soon after this one, that they were working on themselves, and the premise of that story was the Transformers and G.I. Joe characters were set during World War II, and that sounded fantastic to me. However, I found that the heavily inked art, air bubble placements, and panel placements were all factors that made it hard to read and understand what was going on, so I decided not to do it. I bid you guys go check it out and see if you enjoy it. Now, with that explanation out of the way, let's get right into it. So the story opens with the newly established Cobra discovering the buried Autobot ship, the Ark. Now we see that the Autobots and Decepticons are all unconscious. Through the conversation between Cobra Commander and the Baroness, we learn Cobra was able to discover the buried Ark thanks to information given to them by Destro. Now, for some reason, they don't say his name outright, but that's who they're referring to when the Baroness mentions the arms dealer was right, and when Cobra Commander refers to him as the Scotsman. Now, he isn't an official member of Cobra, he just has an alliance with them. He is one of my favorite characters in G.I. Joe, and we'll eventually meet him. Regarding the Baroness, she is Cobra's intelligence officer and lieutenant commander. She was this rich girl with an evil streak who discovered and joined Cobra. Cobra Commander is the leader of Cobra. He is still a mystery. No one, not even the members of Cobra, knows about his past or his identity. However, one thing everyone knows for sure about him is that his end goal is world domination. So as they walk through the ship, Cobra Commander quickly deduces that the ship landed here millions of years ago, and initially believes the Cybertronians are robots that aliens possibly piloted. That's until they come across the body of Megatron, who suddenly awakens saying, "I still function." After he collapses, Cobra Commander orders his troops to collect all of the Cybertronians and seal the Ark's entrance, hiding any evidence that they were ever there. Sometime later, we go to a group of soldiers led by Colonel Abernathy, who will become the leader of the G.I. Joe team. His codename, Hawk. I like to think of him as the Captain America of the group. Just to let you guys know, I'll identify each member of the Joe team, say their codename and specialty. Hawk and his unit are being transported to Washington, D.C. to stand guard over peace talks requested by the president himself. As Hawk is speaking to Lonzo, another future member of G.I. Joe, his codename Stalker, because of his uncanny tracking abilities. One of the soldiers is laughing, and Hawk tells him to can the giggles, and how that should be his nickname, not Snake Eyes. Snake Eyes is the only name he ever goes by. He's the badass ninja of the Joe team, and is my favorite Joe. Now, he isn't the silent ninja Snake Eyes we all know just yet. He actually seems to be a very talkative soldier, but I like how we don't get any dialogue from him. And after this, he signals to Hawk that he'll keep his lips shut. During the peace talks, protesters are outside, but everything seems to remain peaceful even with that going on. At least until Hawk is alerted that foreign aircraft is fast approaching their position. Suddenly, an explosion occurs. A few HISS tanks, which stands for High Speed Sentry, come storming out of these trucks and into the crowd of protesters firing lasers. As Hawk and his troops are firing at the tanks, he points out that they have laser guns. So as the army is being overwhelmed by these tanks, it gets even worse. Cobra's Blackbird and two A-10s arrive, but luckily the Air Force comes at the same time and is not too far behind them. Now, the Air Force pilot leading this squadron is Brad J. Armbruster, another future Joe, codename Ace. He mentions how he can't get a lock on the Cobra jets and deduces they might be using some tech that deflects their scanners. Also, the Cobra Blackbird should be faster than their F-16s, but the two A-10s shouldn't be moving as fast as them. Just to give you guys a clear idea of what he means, an A-10 can fly up to 420 miles per hour, whereas an F-16 can move 3 times faster than that at 1320. When the Air Force pilots start firing at the Cobra jets, Cobra Commander and the Blackbird orders Wild Weasel to take them out. His strapped sidearm warns him that he's unleashing a power he cannot contain. If you're confused about who this is, it's Megatron, in his original alt form, a Walter P-38 pistol. Some Transformer fans think Megatron's original transformation was stupid. I agree, but I don't mind they went this route in this series. It does make sense to keep him imprisoned in this type of form that you could keep close by. Ace goes head to head with one of the A-10s, but ends up in the worst possible scenario when he sees the A-10 transform, revealing to be Thundercracker. He smashes Ace's F-16. Luckily, Ace was able to eject in time. Now we transition back to the ground with the Baroness leading the Cobra tank unit. She orders them not to attack the media because Cobra Commander has a message for the world. Cobra Commander orders her to activate the battle android troopers. This is where it gets crazier. The Baroness's tank transforms into Optimus Prime, and the other Cobra tanks transform into Ratchet and Ironhide, all under Cobra's control. Cobra Commander's Blackbird transforms into Starscream. What's funny here is that Megatron says to Cobra Commander, "It's sweet irony you have Starscream as your personal vehicle, because he's the one most likely to stab you in the back. I'm glad it's Starscream." Cobra Commander has Starscream attack the building where the peace conference is taking place. We'll learn about how Cobra has the Transformers under their control eventually. In the meantime, as Starscream and the other Transformers are attacking the building, one of the Cobra Televipers is having trouble with Optimus Prime. He reports to Cobra Commander that he won't respond. This makes sense because Optimus is different. He carries the matrix of leadership after all. Courtney, a future Joe, codenamed CoverGirl, former fashion model turned grease monkey of the Joe team. She tells Snake Eyes she can't get a good shot with her Wolverine tank. Snake Eyes tries to do what he can by firing his M16 at Starscream, but that doesn't end well. Starscream fires at the Wolverine tank, causing an explosion. Courtney quickly recovers from it and checks on Snake Eyes. She discovers he's alive, but the energy blast has heavily damaged his face. Sometime after the attack, General Flagg reviews the news coverage of Cobra's attack. It was funny that the news said the machines were out of a Japanese cartoon. One thing that is very clear here to General Flagg is Cobra wanted the world to know who they are and what they're capable of doing. They left their signature on the building where the conference was being held. General Flagg introduces Hawk to Officer Deshelle Fairborn, his Joe codename Flint, and Sergeant Allison Burnett, Joe codename Lady J. General Flagg says, "Get to know each other very well, because together the four of us are going to form a task force to take out this threat. It's going to consist of the toughest, baddest, bravest, and craziest SOBs the United States has to offer. Codename G.I. Joe." Now Hawk asks a valid question: how can we fight an enemy we don't know anything about? Flagg reveals this is where Lady J and Flint come in. Lady J has been investigating Cobra for over a year with the FBI and CIA, and Flint is one of the best chief tactical strategists in the US Army. So we have a covert operations specialist and a chief tactician. General Flagg tells Hawk that he won't just be a key member within G.I. Joe, he'll be the one to lead it. Later we go to Cobra Island in the Caribbean. Megatron is reminding Cobra Commander he did warn him control over Optimus would not go as planned. He also reminds him that the energon they found on the Ark will soon run out, and he won't have a way of recreating it on Earth. Cobra Commander simply threatens Megatron that if he doesn't help with the energon problem, he'll stay imprisoned within his current form. He assumes Optimus is just malfunctioning and mentions that Dr. Mindbender, Cobra's head scientist, will eventually decipher Optimus's brain with or without Megatron's help. And though it pleases Megatron to see Optimus being used for evil purposes, he refuses to help. He reminds Cobra Commander he gave him enough information before he trapped him in his current form, and says, "When I break free from this prison, Cobra Commander, I will squash you like the sack of flesh you are." From there, we go to Hawk recruiting Snake Eyes into the G.I. Joe task force, because not only does he think he is a great soldier, but he's never seen anyone able to top his skills, what he calls spooky ninja stuff. So Snake Eyes in this story is an established ninja already. I'm totally content with that. We really don't need to see a Snake Eyes origin story. We learn through this conversation between Carl Greer, codenamed Doc, the medical expert of the team, and Shauna O'Hara, codenamed Scarlet, a skilled fighter who totes a crossbow. Not only did Snake Eyes lose his face and voice due to Starscream's blast, but his parents and twin sister were killed in the attack by Cobra when rubble from a nearby building fell on their car. This is really sad. Hawk and Snake Eyes walk in on their conversation. Sometime later, we go to a meeting between General Flag, Hawk, Lady J, and Flint. Lady J reveals her intel has given her a lead on Cobra's money trail involving the Transformers, and an X factor that may tell them where they may attack next. Transitioning to a couple of my favorite Autobots in disguise, Bumblebee and Wheeljack. We'll learn later why they aren't under Cobra's control like the other Autobots. In the meantime, they've been tracking Cobra's movements in the past couple of months. Bumblebee is going stir crazy because they've been in their disguised states for a while. Wheeljack tells him that they have to stay hidden until they find where the Autobots are being kept. He explains that Cobra's recent attacks have hit some energy manufacturers, petroleum, plutonium, and various electrical plants. He deduces that Cobra is trying to create energon, but they don't know how to harness it. They need a better power source, and it's why their attacks have been hit and run, because they aren't prepared for an all-out war just yet. When Bumblebee mentions that they'll need energon themselves soon, Wheeljack replies it's why they should stay in their disguised states and conserve energy. Returning to Cobra, Dr. Mindbender says those with the red symbols, aka the Autobots, go haywire when it's time for action. They've got the other Autobots under their control, but Optimus is the only one still resisting. He tries hacking his way through Optimus's main processor. That ends up being a bad idea. Optimus hacks their system and downloads a virus. Initially, Dr. Mindbender doesn't want to cut the power because he doesn't want to damage Optimus's operating system permanently. When one of his assistants tells him it's either Optimus or Cobra's system, he decides to cut the power. Cobra Commander calls him and demands to know what happened. Mindbender just lies, saying it was just a minor power surge. Cobra Commander orders him to double check and report to the landing pad immediately, because the arms dealer is about to arrive. We quickly go to Echelon 5, NSA headquarters, where they monitor every email, fax, and telephone transmission. You cannot tell me you don't believe that the government doesn't have one of these going on. What's funny here is this NSA employee is debating with his friend on who's hotter, Jennifer Garner or Eliza Dushku, which is definitely a debate guys were having in the early 2000s, because at that time they both were big stars. He tells his buddy Gardner doesn't hold a candle to Dushku, and he is right. I had the biggest crush growing up on Dushku. God, I loved her as Faith in Buffy the Vampire Slayer. But anyways, let me know if you guys had that debate. He comes across a message and immediately brings it to his boss, Blaine Parker. Future Joe codename, Mainframe, their computer scientist. Now this next bit doesn't add anything to the story, it's just good fun. We go to MacArthur Ido, codename Quick Kick. He's a master of the martial arts, basically the Bruce Lee of the G.I. Joe team, and Marvin F. Hinton, codename Roadblock, a heavy weapons expert built like a brick house. Probably the toughest Joe. It was fitting for The Rock to play that character in G.I. Joe's Retaliation. They're testing their mettle against each other until Snake Eyes interrupts. He signals that he wants in on the fun and indicates that he'll take both of them on by himself. Taking on one of them is crazy, but both is insane. However, when the match begins, Snake Eyes takes them out in just 4 moves without even breaking a sweat. After the match, the other Joes welcome Snake Eyes to the group by dogpiling on him, which is pretty funny. Moments later, Hawk enters the room. Alongside him is General Flag, Lady J, and a new member of the Joe team, Mercer. Now, as far as I'm aware, this is Mercer's first and only appearance when it comes to the comics. He's the X Factor Lady J was referring to earlier. She introduces him as a defector of Cobra's ranks. He explains to the Joes that what they're dealing with isn't some Japanese tech or secret government project gone awry. He reveals it's aliens. And the Joes are skeptical, giving responses any one of us would give, like, yeah, sure, or that's BS. He then shows them images of the Autobot ship, the Ark, that's currently being dismantled and sent to the government's Roswell facility. Roadblock asks if Cobra is a bunch of aliens. Lady J reveals that it's not Cobra, but they're robots that are the aliens. Mercer informs the Joe team that he doesn't know where Cobra is located when he's asked, but he knows where they will hit next. From there we go back to Cobra, which I've been waiting for because James McCullen, codename Destro, has arrived on Cobra Island. Now, as I stated earlier, he's not an official member of Cobra. He just maintains an alliance with them. He's a businessman who runs the largest private weapon manufacturer, MARS, which stands for Military Armament Research Syndicate. It's been the family business for centuries. His Scottish clan designed and sold weapons, and he wears a beryllium steel mask that's a symbol of his heritage, to be worn into battle. He's here to see the progress Cobra has made in their operation, because he is the money, the man funding Cobra, and not only that, the one providing them with advanced weaponry. As the Baroness is escorting him, Cobra Commander arrives. Now they show him what we already know. They were able to change the Transformers into different forms. They demonstrate this by having Jazz transform into a Cobra stun. What's really interesting is when Destro asks about the progress of modifying one of the battle androids into a mobile remote control station in battle, Dr. Mindbender says, yes, allow me to introduce you to Soundwave. We see Soundwave with all of his mini cassettes ready for battle. And that's the end of the video. Remember, we last left off with Destro being shown Cobra's progress with the Transformers. The last thing he was shown was Soundwave as Cobra's remote control station. Now what Dr. Mindbender shows next to Destro are these human piloted mech suits codenamed Snakes that Cobra has developed using the Cybertronian technology, apparently powerful enough to go toe to toe with the Transformer. Just to let you guys know, we're gonna see that in this video. What's messed up here is Dr. Mindbender mentions that they're still trying to get the mech suits to transform while the passenger is still inside, but the results have been messy. That is such a terrible way to go. Destro announces that he will personally pilot Soundwave in the next planned assault on the SPS research facility. We'll find out what that facility is pretty soon. What's funny here is Megatron whispers he likes Destro's take charge attitude, and Cobra Commander tells him to shut up. That's just a slight indicator that Cobra Commander doesn't entirely like Destro, and it's not that he's jealous of him, it's because Destro's attitude and actions suggest that he believes he is the leader of Cobra, and he's not a fan of that at all. From there we go to Joe headquarters where Lady J and Flint are watching the news reporting an image that was sent to emails across the world. And it's of Soundwave. So remember in the last video when Dr. Mindbender tried to tap directly into Optimus's central processor, and then in turn Optimus hacked into Cobra's network? This is his doing, but there is more to it and we'll find that out later. In the meantime, the Joes are called into a briefing. Lonzo, aka Stalker, briefs the team here. Now if like me, you're wondering how Stalker got a lighter skin tone and a thinner mustache, I have no idea. But anyways, he informs the Joes about a secret project that the US Defense Administration has been secretly working on with NASA. A solar-powered satellite codenamed USS-PS. It can harness massive solar energy and beam it straight down to Earth. They only have a prototype in space currently, but pretty much the goal of the government here was to have dozens of these orbiting the planet in order to cut the serious need for oil-based fuels. As we know today, they're hoping nuclear fusion will be that silver bullet. This satellite is Cobra's next target. Just like Wheeljack deduced in the last video, Cobra is seeking to gather enough power to create Energon in order to power the Transformers indefinitely. This is where the fun begins. We have Destro's unit approaching the facility. As he pilots Soundwave, the other Transformers alongside him are Autobots Sunstreaker and his brother Sideswipe. Also alongside him are Cobra's mercenaries, Firefly and Zartan. They're unimportant, so I didn't mention them in the last video, but a quick note about them. Firefly is a mysterious mercenary who's good with explosives, and Zartan is a master of the skies. Destro unleashes all of Soundwave's mini cassettes: Ratbat, Laserbeak, Frenzy, Rumble, and Ravage. Firefly and Zartan activate what they call an alien holocloak, turning invisible, which is a good indicator that Cobra has been able to take Mirage's ability to turn invisible. Initially, Destro believes this operation will be easy, but he is quickly proven wrong when out of nowhere, Frenzy is shot out of the sky. The Joes ambush them. They were able to arrive earlier and prepare for Cobra's attack. Ratbat and Laserbeak approach these scientists, who turn out to be Roadblock, Rock and Roll, and Bazooka in disguise. They unleash firepower hell on them. Just nothing but bullet fire and rockets. Ratbat gets taken out, but Laserbeak is able to cut through and enter the facility. Ravage also enters. Destro closes in, and Rumble rocks the facility. While in the building, Laserbeak starts blasting away some Joes, until he's met by my favorite Joe, Snake Eyes, who takes his head. As Sunstreaker and Sideswipe approach the facility, Wheeljack appears, stopping them both in their tracks. Bumblebee then appears, saving some Joes and smashing Rumble. Inside the facility, Zartan surprises Mutt with his trusty dog Junkyard and Quick Kick. Firefly has already successfully breached the facility and has planted multiple explosives. Outside, believing Bumblebee to be one of the hostiles, these tank units approach him and order him to stand down. They fire a rocket at him. Luckily though, Bumblebee catches it and hurls it right at Rumble. He calls for Wheeljack's help, who is busy battling Soundwave. Mutt and Quick Kick awaken and chase after Zartan, and they're able to successfully track him down in the facility, but Ravage stands in their way. As Destro is battling Wheeljack, Zartan and Firefly inform him they successfully completed their objectives of taking the software necessary to take control of the SPS satellite. Destro orders them to move out, and inside the facility, Quick Kick and Mutt are fighting for their lives against Ravage. But lucky for them, he is remotely ordered to withdraw. I think we can safely assume if Ravage was not toying with them and he was being serious, he would have taken chunks of their skin and they probably would have ended up dead. They both try to start to escape, but at that moment, Firefly activates the explosives all over the building, rocking the facility. Though the explosion seemed fatal, the Joes do survive it. Even though Quick Kick and Mutt should have perished, they survive. However, one life that is taken in the blast is poor Junkyard. Cobra is lucky that this isn't John Wick's dog, or else they'd be Later, Bumblebee and Wheeljack approach the Joes, making it clear that they're allies, and convince Hawk that they need to work together. Mainframe shows the Autobots the image of Soundwave that was blasted across emails around the world, and tells them that no one has been able to decipher the hidden message in the image. Wheeljack reveals to the Joes that they can't decipher it because the text is Cybertronian. The code sent from Optimus Prime is the data necessary to access the network controlling the Transformers. Wheeljack surmises that the Matrix of Leadership must have done this, sending it as a distress signal. Hawk ends up allowing Wheeljack to access their system, but before we go any further, I have to point this out. If you're wondering, oh, who is this man who looks just like Hawk right next to him? Well, that's Conrad S. Hauser, codename Duke. So far, he has been reduced to a background character in the series. I wish he weren't, and I also wish they did something to distinguish between him and Hawk, because besides the attire, they look exactly the same. Fun fact, in the original G.I. Joe series made by Sunbow, Duke was the original field commander of the Joe team. It did alternate between him and Flint though, but later in the second season, Hawk was introduced and he became the official team's commander without explanation really. Wheeljack uses the code sent from Optimus to hack into Cobra's network. At that moment back at Cobra Island, the Transformers are free from Cobra's control. The Constructicons start demolishing the facility. Dr. Mindbender informs Cobra Commander of the situation, and Cobra Commander just says, "I love to help you, Doctor, but I have a problem of my own." Optimus Prime, staring at Cobra Commander, says, "More than you know, Cobra Commander, more than you know." At G.I. Joe headquarters, Wheeljack explains to the Joes what we already know, that Optimus captured the image of Soundwave, and when Cobra tried to breach his system and take control, he took over their network and sent a message embedded in the image of Soundwave. However, we learned that Optimus also embedded the coordinates for Cobra Island. Speaking of Cobra Island, right now it is in deep trouble. The Constructicons are about to take out Dr. Mindbender. Shortly after arriving back on Cobra Island, Zartan tells Destro he and Firefly need the second half of their payment, then they'll be on their way. But that isn't happening because Soundwave awakens and says no one is going anywhere except Oblivion. He fires his shoulder cannon and ejects Rumble and Ravage. I know it's weird that Rumble is here when earlier we just saw that the Autobots had captured Rumble. But anyways, Destro and his men begin to run for their freaking lives. Optimus goes after Cobra Commander. Cobra Commander tries to use Megatron to fire at Optimus, but even though he is trapped in his current form, Megatron still can resist. Unable to escape, Megatron tells Cobra Commander if he frees him, he'll survive. With no other choice, Cobra Commander frees Megatron. He transforms and smashes Optimus Prime. The Televipers do their best to keep control of the Transformers plugged into the network. As that's going on, Ironhide wakes up, as do the rest of the Autobots, Ratchet, Mirage, and Jazz. The Televipers almost regain control of Ironhide until Ratchet unplugs him from the network. Once the Autobots are free, they roll out to find Optimus. At Joe headquarters, as the Joes prepare for their attack on Cobra Island, Army General Renegar, I hope I said that correctly, and Horn arrive. They inform Hawk that they'll be taking Wheeljack and Bumblebee into custody and take them to Area 51 in order to experiment and dismantle them. To no surprise, the government wants to do what Cobra did and reverse engineer the Cybertronian technology. Still, to ensure that they're the only ones with this technology, General Renegar reveals to the Joes that they are canceling their planned attack on Cobra Island and ordering a nuclear strike on it instead. Hawk, just following orders, activates the magnetic pulse generator the generals had prepared on the cargo plane for Wheeljack and Bumblebee. Hawk informs the Joes of the change of plans, but before they leave, Wheeljack, still conscious, reveals that Cobra is stockpiling energon. If the nuclear strike happens, the reaction would send the planet into a nuclear winter that would kill everything. As the Joes are facing that dilemma, Cobra Island is still in chaos. Megatron continues to smash Optimus. It goes back and forth until Soundwave intervenes and blasts Optimus in the chest. Optimus falls after another blast from Megatron. Megatron orders Soundwave to activate the SPS satellite in order to start creating a supply of energon. As he is about to finish off Optimus, out of nowhere, he is blasted by the ever opportunistic Starscream. He tells Megatron a change in leadership is in order, and he'll take this opportunity to end him and Optimus. But as always, Starscream talks too much, and Megatron fires back at him. Their little squabble distracted them long enough for Optimus to rise and for his fellow Autobots to arrive. Nearby, Cobra Commander attempts to sneak off the island, but Gears and Brawn take him by surprise. They capture him and try to take him to Optimus until suddenly they're blasted by Cobra's most dangerous ninja assassin, Storm Shadow, piloting one of the Snake units. Storm Shadow shows just how capable a Snake unit can be against Transformers. He easily dodges Gears and Brawn's attacks and takes them both out. Brawn even says that the Snake unit hits as hard as a Cybertronian. Elsewhere, Destro and Zartan are still running for their lives. Rumble nearly catches Destro until the Baroness stomps him into the ground with the Snake unit. Back at the lab, Dr. Mindbender is being tortured by the Constructicons. Soundwave orders them to stop because they need Mindbender for the satellite. And we see that Ravage did capture Firefly. The Constructicons ask Soundwave what are their orders, and Soundwave replies, protect the satellite and Energon, combine together and form Devastator. Disobeying orders, the entire G.I. Joe task force flies toward Cobra Island. This is where we learn why Wheeljack and Bumblebee were the only Transformers not captured by Cobra. It's really nothing crazy, no big reveal. Hawk explains to Wild Bill that they were sealed off in a different part of the Ark, which is why Cobra didn't find them. And when Cobra blasted the cavern in order to seal it off again, it activated Teletran 1, who brought them back online. He assures Wild Bill that they're doing the right thing, and when they get court-martialed, he'll do his best to take all the blame. Wild Bill replies, you don't have to justify it to me or any of the Joes. Some things are just worth fighting for. Next up is the finale of G.I. Joe versus the Transformers. Hey, what's up everyone? James here, and we are back with the end of G.I. Joe versus the Transformers. So we open right where we left off. The battle on Cobra Island is still raging on. The Autobots and Decepticons are battling each other and the Cobra forces. Coming in hot by sea and air are the G.I. Joe Task Force, Bumblebee, and Wheeljack. Meanwhile, at the Pentagon, General Renegar convinces the president that the threat of Cobra unleashing the Transformers on any city again is too great. So the president gives the go-ahead on General Renegar's nuclear strike on Cobra Island. Now, on the island, the Decepticons have taken over the SPS satellite. They use the satellite to channel the microwave energy of the sun. The satellite collects it like a battery and beams it down to Earth into these energon cubes. This is enough energy to power an army of Decepticons. Now, outside the facility, the Constructicons join the battle and form Devastator. He fires at the Autobots and takes out Hound. Wheeljack and Bumblebee call him a monster and charge toward him with the Joes at their back. Now, from here we go to one of my absolute favorite moments in this series. Nearby in the forest, Snake Eyes comes face to face with Starscream. Remember, back in part 1, Starscream is the one who scarred Snake Eyes. Starscream tells Snake Eyes how he'll take him and use him as a bargaining chip, but that isn't happening because Snake Eyes immediately strikes Starscream, taking out one of his optics, then shoves a grenade into it. This shocked Starscream so much that he ends up stumbling and falling down the waterfall. Elsewhere, Cobra Commander and his lackeys are continuing their escape, but who stops them in their tracks is some of the Autobots. Blue Streak says, Storm Shadow, Baroness, Zartan, and Cobra Commander, we're taking you in. The Baroness and Zartan charge them, and they get beaten down quick, fast, and in a hurry. The Autobots believe the rest of them are going to be easy pickings, but remember, in the last video, we saw Storm Shadow is highly capable in a snake unit. When he enters the fray, he takes Trailbreaker's head like that. It's over for him. The Autobots are initially shocked at this, but quickly become enraged and dogpile him. They start ripping apart his snake unit. Back with Optimus and the rest of the Autobots, they become aware the Decepticons are using the SPS satellite to create energon. With no time to devise a strategy before the Decepticons become fully powered, Optimus decides just to charge toward them. He comes bursting into the facility and threatens to fire on the energon cubes, willing to sacrifice himself to end them. However, Megatron calls his bluff and orders the Decepticons to attack. Now, this Optimus has some spice to him. He reminds me of Bayverse Optimus. He feeds on the energon cubes and after that plunges his fist right through the chest plate of Soundwave. Then takes out his mini cassettes, like he grabs Ravage and crushes his body in his hands. Megatron, seeing a beefed up powered Optimus taking out his Decepticons, causes him to retreat. Returning to Wheeljack, Bumblebee, and the Joes, who were able to defeat Devastator, they are suddenly contacted by General Flag, who informs them that the president has ordered a nuclear strike on the island. The nukes launch, and with only 5 minutes until the island is hit, Hawk asks Wheeljack if he has any ideas on how to stop them. Wheeljack contacts Mainframe to meet him and Sci-Fi at the SPS Control Center. He tells him that if both of them and Sci-Fi put their brains together, they could override the satellite's program and use it to shoot the nukes out of the sky. I don't think I mentioned Sci-Fi before in previous videos. He is the Joe team's laser trooper. The reason why he's included with Wheeljack and Mainframe, who are both the brains of their individual teams, is because he is also very intelligent. His specialty is electrical engineering. They enter the facility, find Dr. Mindbender hiding, and force him to help them override the SPS Control Center. After they override the satellite, out of nowhere an explosion occurs. Breaking into the facility is Storm Shadow, leading a group of Cobra soldiers. Now, how Storm Shadow is here in a snake unit when the Autobots clearly stopped him and seemingly tore apart his snake unit definitely goes unexplained, but that's the nature of comics for you. What's cool here though is he goes head to head with Bumblebee. As the battle is raging on within the facility, Mindbender and Mainframe are able to figure out the nuke's targeting trajectory. They reposition the satellites and successfully destroy the nukes. However, their problems aren't over. A stray energy blast hits the SPS control panel, causing the satellite to fire randomly on their position, raining lethal energy blasts on the island. The first to go from these stray energy blasts are the Seekers. They get blasted out of the sky. Now, as the island is being bombarded by these lethal energy blasts, Cobra Commander, continuing his escape, comes across Starscream's damaged body. Starscream makes him a proposition. If he can remove the grenade from his eye, he'll help him escape. What doesn't make sense here is he says that he's so low on energy that he cannot take out the grenade himself, yet he has enough energy to somehow help Cobra Commander escape. Also, why Snake Eyes' grenade didn't go off goes unexplained for those of you who are wondering. Now as Megatron is making his escape off the island, he finds his path is blocked by the Joes. Megatron whips out his Energon mace and starts bringing the battle to them. Now let's not forget, everyone on the island is still dealing with a bombardment of lasers coming down. One of the satellite's lasers kills Mercer, who really wasn't important. As Megatron is about to stomp on Duke, another raining laser destroys his hand that contained his Energon mace. The Joes use this opportunity to unleash all their firepower on him, destroying the rest of his arm. Now who arrives catching up to Megatron is Optimus Prime. Their one-on-one clash begins again. Optimus quickly gains the upper hand and starts beating down Megatron while saying all the suffering, all the pain, all the death stops now. Another reason why I say he reminds me of Bayverse Optimus is because when Megatron says to him, "You finally see that my way is right, that force and power carry the day," Optimus's response is, "I'll contemplate that while you're being disassembled, starting with this." He rips off Megatron's arm cannon and informs Mainframe, who's been trying to shut down the satellite, that he's been monitoring their communications and knows the situation. He tells him to send him the data necessary to target the satellite. So with Megatron's cannon combined with a boost from an Energon cube, Optimus fires this huge blast into space, destroying the SPS satellite. After saving everyone on the island, Optimus knocks out Megatron. We then go to an Air Force base in Ohio 10 weeks later after the battle on Cobra Island. Optimus is about to board the newly built Ark provided by the government. Optimus thanks Hawk, but this new Ark did not come out of the goodness of their heart. It came through an exchange of technology, because as we see here, the Joes now have their own giant mech suits to pilot. The Autobots leave the planet, planning on returning back to Cybertron. Meanwhile, in the Florida Keys, we see Cobra Commander and Starscream successfully escaped Cobra Island and are now working together and bickering. This is funny and fitting because the great Chris Latta voiced both characters in the original cartoon series of both franchises. From there, we go to somewhere in the New Mexico desert underground. The government has taken possession of the Decepticons' bodies, but what's interesting is they also seem to have parts of Optimus, which doesn't make sense since he clearly just left. Anyways, what's really important here is that the government is reconstructing Megatron and his fellow Decepticons. That is the end of G.I. Joe versus the Transformers. The end of the first volume at least. There are actually 3 more volumes after this that continue the story of this universe. I can tell you now, the second volume involves Cybertron and some time traveling. It does get a bit weird. Maybe I'll cover them as well in the future. Let me know what you think about this series, and if you want me to cover the rest of it, comment down below and hit that like button. Other than that, have an awesome day, and always remember every day to transform and go beyond. See you later, Beyonders.